Tonight's episode, The Endangered Species.
It's 11:59 at Radio Free America, and this is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
GearWebsites.com is your source for firearms-based playing cards and books. We also have mugs, shirts, and posters with designs that we've made live. Of course, we have patches. Every Friday is Free Patch Friday. We appreciate your support. Thank you for shopping at GearWebsites.com. Yeah, welcome everybody. Whoever shows up live. This is a weird one because I think I scheduled this. Will it tell me? I scheduled this a long time ago. Let's see what it says. If you go to Streamyard, oh, you can't just do that. So let's go to here and see what happens. If it takes me into here and shows me, I scheduled this on June 9th of last year. What? Yeah, I scheduled the show that you're watching right now in June 9th of last year. So there's a couple of things that I've got over there on the Patreon that I keep pushing around. And this is one of them, just kind of like a ball that you keep kicking down the road. And this one, it wasn't imminent, it wasn't important, and it wasn't urgent, so it got pushed down the road. So today, it's not necessarily any more urgent or any more important. I just had a couple of minutes to spend on something like this, and I figured let's knock it out of there. And it is super fun. It's a history of ammunition, after all. So I'm watching the numbers over here on the stream, and we'll so we're doing this live, recording it, sharing the screen, and we'll go along. I'll kind of narrate here. Now, if nobody shows up live, I'm not trying to prove nothing, so we'll just end it. But if a bunch of people show up, then we'll have a conversation and we'll create the content and have some fun this afternoon. And I invited quite a few people to join in. Now, if those people show up, and this is like last minute, they didn't even know the show was happening. But if I caught any of them on a time when they've got some time to spend and they jump in and we have a conversation, then that's great. And then the live people can be part of that. But this way we're catching the best of both worlds, sending out some links to people who might be in the know, as well as going live for anybody who's just interested or been, well, I can't imagine anybody's been waiting for this one. It's been on the schedule for so long and keeps getting kind of removed from the schedule and then brought back on, and then I forget about it or can't do it, gets pushed back into what do they call that, like nowhere zone or whatever, and then gets pushed back onto the schedule. All right, so that's the story of this broadcast, this stream, and whoever shows up will determine whether or not it's a good stream and whether or not the length of this stream. So let's take a look. I probably should and just tidied up a bunch of things before we started, but I didn't because doing it live. All right, so we got the history of ammo. What's that all about anyway? Well, ammunition is necessary for the operation of our firearms. They like to eat it, and it's super interesting. There's lots of development there, lots of pieces to the ammunition is made up of a bunch of different pieces, and each of those pieces has had development over the years, and it's in flux. It's not done. We'll see a lot of development still. With that being said, it's a necessary part. It's an interesting part, and depending on how you want to break it all down, it's a pretty big chunk of the whole history of guns. So I don't have anything over here on Minuteman University other than a placeholder for it. And if I were to turn on the camera, I guess I can do that. Why don't I just turn on the camera? Since this book is inches away from me here, and all I really got to do is move this over, I guess. I got my camera on a little microphone arm, and I would have to turn on my camera and put me on the screen. There we go. So this 2A resource handbook has been the focus of a couple of different projects, and what it is an attempt to give Second Amendment advocates, people who are interested in firearm community, culture, whatever, a resource, right? Second Amendment resource handbook. This is the table of contents. It talks about the laws, what it's like to own a gun. So the laws and the consequences is one way to look at that. The obligations, responsibilities, and what it's like to own a gun in the United States. We've got the gun owners' rights lobby and the people that make that up, the activists, and then the industry, right? And each of these things in the table of contents is basically a page in here. So if we get towards the back, the industry portion of it has something about collectors and museums. That's my favorite, one of my favorite parts. Hunting, it's interesting. Shooting sports, that kind of thing. Competitors, shooting sports. Then, what do you know? The history of ammo. So, got the history of guns. See what we got going on there. And that's the concept. Have something like this a couple of pages later, because there's plenty of room for guns. A lot of stuff happening there to get to the history of ammo. So, in this project, I've given history of ammo 2 spreads, so 4 pages. That's a lot of stuff. But look, we start with gunpowder in 10th century China, first recipes for gunpowder, etc. And we go through the horrible times of the metrics until we get to back to, well, the last thing I had in here was 2015, but there's probably things that have happened in the last 7 years. So a lot of stuff to add to this, but also I want to get it more than just a big list like this. So I'm trying to figure out a cooler way to display it. I don't know, lay it out. I guess that's the right word. Have a better layout for this whole thing. So I've got, 4 pages. I could add more if I had to. It's kind of a pain in the butt to renumber everything, but I'm sure this thing will grow. So this is to give you some idea of the 2A history project. Is a lot of stuff. The history of ammo, I don't know. It's important. It's necessary, but it's not, urgent or, well, it is important though. Anyhow, like I'm saying, as far as things go, it gets 2 pages in this book, which isn't insignificant. Most things get 1 page. It's getting 4 pages, but let's spend some time trying to figure that out. So with that in mind, this is a book, right? And some people are down with this. Other people think this is a waste of time and stupid or whatever. So if this is a book, let's go back to turning off of this camera and going back to the screen and moving the website, which is kind of empty right now, over to the software I use to write the books and take a look at what would be the next book or a different book. And this is those 4 pages in the one book displayed or laid out in 39 pages of this book. So I've taken that same data that we were just looking at in paper and laid it out sometime middle of last year. This is the kind of stuff when everybody else is just in a live chat, I guess watching TV or something. I'm in a live chat laying this kind of stuff out. So I just laid all this stuff out, pieces of other projects, and kind of developing what would be needed for an illustrated history of ammunition. And that's what we got so far. So that's what we're working on, is resurrecting this story of ammo project from the 2A resource handbook after a year, right? And then whenever I come up with here, or we come up with, if people join or participate, I guess, either way, then we'll take whatever's accumulated here or created here and try to shove it into the 4 pages of that other book, so that they, so that the effort is dual. All right, so since I'm just talking about it and trying to figure out what all I did in the past, sometimes when you work on a lot of projects, you have to look at what you've already done. So let's do that. Let's take a look at what's out there now, what's already completed, and I'll figure out what's What's the best approach? Oh, you're telling me I can't automatically scroll? What a hork and ripoff. What a hork. All right, so we'll just have to manually scroll, I guess, like a sucker. So that's the cover. I didn't even put anything in the second page here where you got to put all your garbage stuff that you have to put in there. Then I'm guessing this is going to be the table of contents at some point. Then we start with that timeline. So we start with gunpowder. I don't really care about anything until it happens in the United States. So some of this stuff is obligatory. You have to mention the metric stuff and the other stuff that happened outside of our country, even though less of it's less important than the stuff that happened here. So you get all this stuff that happened. Basically, they invented guns and metal tubes, and they pushed them together and then made guns, really slow, dumb guns. And then the United States happened, and then guns got good. So you got 1777 Springfield Armory and Remington being founded. Did you know what's older, Remington or Cellar Bellet? That's right, Remington, because we're better. Anyway, you get into the companies are in gray. So when you see a logo over here, that's a company happening. So you got Remington, 1816. Tula thinks it's so good, 1880. So yeah, United States have been making gunpowder longer than Russia. We all knew that. But there's evidence of it. 70 years earlier-ish. 64 years earlier, I guess. So anyway, you get every time you see a logo, that's where the company pops up and turns onto the scene. Now, some of them, like Savage, you might go, what the hell is Savage doing in there? They make guns. Well, they also make calibers. And I'm not an expert on that. That's why I invited experts in here. We'll see if they come in to help out. Let's see. So you have your timeline happening, and then you have your colors and these visual indicators. But what I'm missing is a whole bunch of images of the... Oh, what did I close that? I'm missing a bunch of images of the ammo, right? So if I go into here and I go into here and then here, well, why don't we take a look at some pictures that we've taken over the years of ammo? So because all we ever do is create content that has to do with firearms, at some point, I'm guessing, let's see if this will tell us. Created 21, no, modified in 2013. Somewhere in 2013, I took my ammo collection, set up my camera at a fixed height above the piece of paper, put a slight crease in the grid paper, or the grid, what is this called? Graph paper, so that the ammo would stay in the center there, and then got some lighting as good as I could in 2013, and took pictures of everything I had in my ammo collection so that there'd be a consistent, they're all consistent. They're all on the same size grid. So I went with the grid that would give me most of the big ammo I had, but not a 50 BMG. But otherwise you wouldn't see the tiny stuff because I'm a big fan of the tiny stuff. So anyway, so I have a bunch of these images, and since they're my images, and they're not great, but they're enough that most of them, except for these yellow ones, have decent enough contrast and stuff. I could probably Photoshop the bullet out of there. But this way we've got some really consistent images for the project. And that would be, just whatever ammo I happen to have in my collection. But, I don't know how many this is. Can we figure it out? How would we figure this out? We'd zoom out so that we're just looking at the smaller versions. And then we would highlight all of them. And then down here, it'll tell us 139 items selected, and we can tell that a couple of these aren't bullets, right? They're other things, different pictures and files and stuff. So now we're looking at something like 133. Those are probably all separate. So that's 133 caliber images that are already existing that we can use, like recycle from past years and past projects. And you might go, what would you do with all of that stuff? Oh, well, that's not on this empty website. That's on a whole different website called Ammo Buyer's. That's Rifle Buyer's Guide. How about Ammo Buyer's Guide? And if we go to Ammo Buyer's Guide, that's an effort to share the collection by being able to be sortable. So here's those same images, but next to each other, and so you can see them. And there's, what is this? Pistol ammo, and then revolver ammo, right? And rimfire ammo, and so forth. So that's what the websites are all about. There's links to our Patreons, to people like GunTube and Great Start Shooting School. And when you refresh, when people are hanging out over here, they could be looking at ammo and whatnot, and then boom, they get some information about FOSS, our Patreons, Girl in a Gun, refresh. Now it'll be down there. Oh, there's Great Start again, GunTube, refresh, right? So that's where all this stuff lives. This stuff is just an effort to play around with the pictures and to offer some insight for people that might be collecting ammo, right? So this is all about collecting ammo and that kind of thing. That's more like specimens and types and ways to collect, right? That has not less to do with the history of. So that's why that project over there isn't going to do us much good. But we have those as resources. So let's see. So we've got the gray is companies coming onto the scene. That's, oh, this is gunpowder. So gray is, and then also innovations, I suppose. So we get 22 short. Actually, that probably needs to be red. Dang it. I used red. Oh, I used red for commie calibers. That's what it is. So gray is indicating calibers and what do you call these? Milestones in innovation, I guess, waypoints of innovation. And then the blue is calibers. Okay, that's how it went. Blue is calibers. So red is the commie calibers, or like lame metric calibers and European calibers and things like that. And let's see what else we got in here. So we've got companies and cartridges and foreign cartridges. Okay, now I'm up to speed again. All right, so that gives us through the first page and the second page of the book. And now we're down to the third page. And, you know, I'm doing this through a timeline, so I don't really get to sort them by types or maybe incentives. Is that the way I say it? Like, because there's going to be things that are made for war, and there's going to be things that are made for hunting. There's going to be things that are made for other reasons, I guess, marksmanship maybe, or sporting, right? There's going to be different reasons to create ammo. So I haven't figured out a way to incorporate that aspect in. Maybe some sort of little icon or something to designate if it's like a military, police, hunting, sport type of caliber, because that's, like I said, part of the whole thing here. So when you get this book and you think of the pages as going through time, right? History of ammo and whatnot, then the dates over here probably could do something to get the dates more consistent. Because right now the dates are the same typeface, size, and color of the type next to them. And that doesn't really do much to separate that. So potentially I could have some sort of a timeline going down the side of the page or something and let these things kind of point to the areas of the timeline where they live. And that might, you know, like on a real timeline, that might help show some of these spurts. I guess that's one of the things I was talking about too, is like when something's made for war, they happen right around the wars, right? Like things made for war kind of distribute out and just kind of happen randomly until there's a war. And then all of a sudden there's a surge in innovation. So you see that when you look back into the timelines of these things. So some of that might be interesting or relevant to the development of why these things were developed, perhaps. And then things like the buffalo slaughter, that was a significant factor in the development of ammo, because they assholes needed to kill buffaloes faster or whatever, sort of reasons they had. Evil reasons they had, I don't know. But then we get couple of, oh, I didn't page number these things. Let's page number these things already. How do you page number stuff? Is that impossible? Do you have to go and do that with a crayon? How does this happen? So this is the files, right? All these different pages stuck together in the software. Go over here and you get these, I don't know what they're called, these things up here. You go into here and you zoom out a little bit and move that over, and you create a little place over here for some text. Boom. And now let's go to that place with text in it, and let's tell it, let's objectify it. Let's tell it that, yeah, you're what you are or whatever. However, what you also are is a special character, and you are a marker of the current page number. So there you go. Now we've marginalized it, and even though it wanted to live its life, we've told it you're going to be a page number from now on. And now we've given it a format that's consistent with the rest of the whole thing, like that, let's say. And then we just kind of clean up this little thingy here and maybe even make it center justified so it's a little easier for us. And then go down here and cram it here. And so that we don't have to do any extra work, copy and paste that, and then take the pasted copy and shove it over here. And now what that's going to do is tell the software every time this master is applied to a page, go ahead and do whatever the master says. So this master is going to be applied to that page and that page, right? But we can also just highlight all the pages, maybe not the last 3 pages, and then, oh, it already applied the master to all of them, so I guess we don't have to do anything. So now we can go back and double click on one, and what do you know? Page numbers exist. So that's how you use software to your advantage instead of writing it on your screen with a crayon. It gets way difficult if you just write page numbers for something like this on your screen, because you scroll and then it moves, so it's a waste of time. All right, so now we're going back and checking out that we were barely in 1880. Tula, Russia's finally getting around to making gunpowder in 1880. Everybody else had been making gunpowder since like 1242, whatever. So 600 years later, Tula happens. They didn't make crinks immediately, but eventually they started figuring out how to make crinks up there. All right, so then we get into the stupid 9mm. Look how the stupid 9mm is right at the top of that page. I feel like that gives it too much significance, and what I'd really like to do is just jam it over here to the bottom of that page. But the problem is 1900. And it would be dumb to have 1899 and 1901 on that page and then start this page with 1902. So stupid 9mm is horking on the concept that I want to start this page with 1900, the year 1900. And it's a stupid caliber, and it just hides like that in a corner. So that's what it's doing. But let's not forget that before that stupid caliber, you had better calibers like the 22 long rifle and 30-30 Winchester and 32 Winchester Special and 32 Smith & Wesson and 45-70, 45 Colt. Let's keep going. 44 Smith & Wesson, 22 short, right? All of these calibers came along for the stupid 9mm. But we have to include it in the book because it's the right thing to do, I guess. So then we keep going. Federal comes along and says, what do you mean 9mm? Why don't we start making calibers in this country? So the horrible 9mm spurs off a whole bunch of new calibers that are better than 9mm, like 38 Special and all these other ones, 45 ACP, 25 ACP, 30-06, 35 Remington, 44 Special. Like, we just were like, you know what, stupid 9mm, take this and that and this. All right, so now you can see all that in this timeline or whatever. I guess people are saying stuff over here. Nobody's joining in, so I feel like I'm just going to get up to speed on this and then probably turn on a podcast and do this off air, because guess what? It's way faster when you do this kind of stuff without narrating it. All right, let's go. But this is an opportunity to one, get this project out of the way because I've been wanting to do it for a while. 2, have a 2A media workshop. So anybody that might want to come in and learn how to work software or whatever. 3, give people a chance to talk about what stuff they know with stupid some of this ammo, hunting ammo and stuff I don't know about. And whatever other reasons, right? Have something to do on a Thursday that isn't in reaction to news of the day. So I can turn that off and go back to here. But like I said, I'm not trying to prove nothing. So if nobody jumps in, I got a lot of links out there. If nobody jumps in, then we'll just end it here. Oh, snap. Did I miss that? How did I miss that? Thank you for that. Let's get over here and immediately get over here and immediately get over here and open up the calendar and then immediately get down here and see that it is not in the calendar. So that means we need to jump in, get over to events, get over to here and type in Bannerman. Boom. Bannerman Castle. Francis Bannerman died. Can this thing be more squished? Come on. Explodes. Are you kidding me? All I have is it died. So, wow. Okay, well, I guess I need to do something here. I guess I won't end this immediately, but I'll open this up and jam it over here so that I go add that to the calendar. Thanks, Makojo, very much. So, right on. And, of course, Bannerman is super critical to the history of ammo. What's going on? What happened? What did I do? Oh, I pulled that out of there. There we go. Do I have Bannerman in here at all? I should definitely put the Bannerman Castle in here, though. So, okay, here's how Bannerman fits into all this. Somewhere in here, I need to put the wars in here, dang it. When was the Civil War? Ugh, come on, let me get this thing over here. And I think I got the wars in this timeline. All right, so you got your... No, I don't have the wars in here, dang it. Oh, yeah, I do. Okay, so 1861 to 65. So you're talking just after, the good stuff happens. 22 short gets invented, 1857. Everybody's living a good life. The 22 short now exists. Everybody knows it's all downhill from here. Everything else is just inevitable. Other increases in technology, success for humanity, exploration of other planets, all the benefits that come from creating the 22 short, the best caliber ever made. So then other countries, the evil countries that are horrible, they go, oh, you know what let's do? Let's start a civil war in the United States. So they started a bunch of memes and all kinds of fake news and stuff. They started a war in our country. And that's when you get things like the 44 Henry coming along and all these other things. And then the war ends in 65. And let's see. Wait, did he make all his money in the Mexican-American War? I think he made a bunch of money in the Mexican-American War. And if that's the case, it was 1846. So somewhere up in here is where Bannerman makes a bunch of money. Then the Civil War happens, and then he makes a bunch of money on the Civil War also. So by the time you get to before World War II, so by the time you get to just after the stupid 9mm comes on the scene, you get Bannerman coming into his stride. I think it must have been then. So it was the Spanish-American War. That's what it is. The Spanish-American War happens, and I got to go figure out the dates on that. It's over. I don't think the Spanish-American War lasted that long, right? Let's take a quick look real quick. Spanish-American War. Come on, Linda. Let's see what Wikipedia says about the Spanish-American War. So it was from April to August of 1898. And Caribbean, U.S. withdraw, aftermath. Let's see what it says. Well, let's just see if Bannerman is included in here. Do a Control F and type in Banner. And no. So basically at the end of the war in 68, did that say? Then that's when Bannerman goes, hey, you know what? I'll buy all that stuff that you're not using. So that was 1898, just before stupid 9mm is invented. Right around when Olin was forming the Western Cartridge Company. That's the end of the Spanish-American War. So Bannerman says, oh, I'll just buy all that old stuff off you. And it's something like 1 million or 4 million. I forget. Something like 1 million cartridges of whatever the caliber was back then. Anybody know what that caliber was? Probably one of these weird calibers. Maybe 303 British, or Craig is probably Craig, because that's ours, and it's weird and old. So it was probably like 1 million rounds of this old weird caliber, and he brings it home to New York, because why not? That's where he lived, and that's where his museum/business was. So he brings 1 million rounds of ammo to New York, and New York is like, wait a minute, we can't handle this. We're about to have the Sullivan Law in 1911. We're about to freak out. Now, Bannerman didn't cause them to freak out. Let's not start that rumor. But instead, Bannerman showed them that they're so scared that they're going to freak out 10 years later. But they definitely freak out and tell him, get your ammo out of here. Like, we're going to have a fit if you don't get your ammo out of here. And that's when Bannerman goes, I'll buy an island and put all my ammo in a castle, well, next to the castle on my island until 1926 or something when it blows up. But he takes all that ammo from Spanish-American War, brings it to New York. They tell him, get it out of here. So he takes it to his island. And that is all happening right around here. And that should definitely be in the book because Bannerman is awesome. And think about all that ammo. Stupid government was like, oh, let's buy a bunch of ammo for whatever it costs because we have to have it right this second. Oh, we don't need it 8 months later? No problem. Just sell it for scrap. Sell it because we don't even want it. We would just walk away, but we might as well make a buck off of it. So let's sell it for 50 cents. And that's what they did. They sold it for basically nothing, and Bannerman started that whole concept of surplusing. And then later on, the stuff that he bought off of them, they would be like, oh, snap, it's World War I. And since we shut down all our factories, we don't know how to make cannons anymore. And there's no way we can facilitate that in any time frame that's reasonable. So then Bannerman's like, all right, here you can have all these cannons back for basically the price that they're going for. And then a bunch of people were like, oh, he's scamming the government. So he basically helped them out and then got in trouble for it. So thanks for that. That's awesome. No, why would I talk about news of the day? You're going to make a couple of bucks, go talk about it. Good afternoon. What's up? And how many rounds? That is a good question. That's not possible to tell. I figure if you know how many rounds are in your collection, you're just getting started. I don't even know how many calibers are in my collection. I don't know any way to know about that kind of stuff. I know what room it's all in. How about that? Actually, most of it is in there. Let's see. I'm making spacers for sling mounts on my hunting rifle. The original one's dry rotted. So you're talking about making them out of leather, I guess. Why do I not like 9mm? Because people get worried about stupid crap, and it's a great way to illustrate the stupid crap that people get all worried about when, number one, nobody is an expert, and number two, the people that are experts get ignored by the people who are basically brand new and just have better reach. So it's very, very, very funny to watch. That's not funny. It's frustrating. It's humorous, I guess, but it's mostly frustrating to watch, I don't know, grown people, because it's not just men anymore. It used to be men for years, but I've been hanging around guns since I was a little kid. So I've been watching grown men get into guns because it's their hobby or their new thing, or they actually get woke and figure out it's important or whatever. So all the different reasons people come to guns, y'all think like, oh, I came to guns and I took this path. Well, look around. Everybody comes to guns and takes one of like 4 paths. So everybody comes into guns and goes, oh, I can get a gun. And then you either get another gun and then you start buying guns, or you buy that first gun, it goes in the closet, or you get rid of the gun, right? There's like 4 or 5 paths everybody takes. And all you got to do is wake up, quit looking at your own toys and look around, and everybody's taking that same path. Everybody's on the same set of journey, same path. And everybody gets to that same point where you're like, no, caliber, oh, grip angle, blah, blah, blah. And unfortunately, I'm just bored of this. Like, I went through that as a youngin', and then I went through it as a teenager, then I went through it as a young adult, and then I went through it as later on, and then I went through it again, and then it's on the internet, so it happens like, but now it comes in waves. It's a consistent thing, but it comes in waves. And at some point, I don't know, years ago, I got frustrated, and instead of trying to explain all this, I'll just rage on 9, and it lets people realize that it's all stupid, and that if you really think grip angle matters, then tell me about how you won't drive a Ferrari because it doesn't have the same seat as your Toyota, which is so comfortable. People buy what they're told to buy. Well, there's Glover Tech. Speaking of being told what to buy, what are you in the pocket of big whatever this week? Big ammo, hopefully.
I was wondering if we were going to talk about 30 Super Carry because
There you go.
That's the thing now. That's the 9mm for all.
Mainly the
kids,
9mm is just a quick shorthand of being like, come on, let's get past this. Just like people that are gonna stand there and be bedazzled by the sparkly thing. Like, that's how you become a mechanism for the people that are actually working against you. You know, if you're getting offered sparkly things too quick, probably a lure. It's probably not a random sparkly shrimp. You know, it's probably not normal food. It's something that's bait, and you don't necessarily need to stop and react every time it goes by. At least that's my opinion. And in this case, we're off topic here, but let's see. So thanks, Makojo, and but I appreciate you bringing it up because I've been rusty on the calendar. But that's all going to end here once we get the new projects up and running. But shaking the rust off of all that, and in an effort to, I didn't know about the news of the day until like literally as I was posting the thing on Instagram, I saw that people are posting that letter or whatever. But yeah, I'm not going to react other than just to say I ain't reacting. But thanks, Clover, for jumping in. I'll move it to this, which gives you the chance to be on the screen still. So getting back to ammo, I'm glad you jumped in for two reasons. One, you know about ammo, and I think you know about my projects and what my goals are here. And feel free to start riffing because, two, I did not pee before I started this whole thing. And for whatever 36 minutes I've been wanting to go and not going. So I'm going to take a minute and go pee, and I'll be back in a minute.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess I can freestyle it here for a minute. I don't got a whole lot of time to hang out, but I haven't been listening. So I'm guessing we started back, obviously, black powder was a thing. And what's interesting is, you get a lot of pushback, a lot of kickback when, in modern times, there's a new caliber that comes out. But, in reality, there's new calibers that are out all the time. There are companies that will make brass to your specifications, and there are people that are always wildcatting. That's where that term comes from. Some cartridge that is not in, in the SAMI spec. And that's been going on since day one. That's how things get invented and become popular, of course. But but black powder. You had black powder, and then you had set it off with a fuse. Matchlock, flintlock, cap and ball, percussion cap stuff. And even black powder. Moved. It was very short lived, I think. Black powder in a cartridge, and then moved from there. Somebody came up with the idea of course, smokeless when you move into cartridge. And, that's when it really started getting crazy. And what's weird is when you talk about propellants, where, when you look at black powder, we've had black powder for literally centuries, right? And then
100, like 400 years or something.
Yeah, like forever.
400 years.
And still around today. People use it, and it's viable for a lot of things. Then you
well,
look
for
at
400 years, if you knew, you could go get some bat poop and pee on it and scrape some stuff in it, and then some smelly stuff in it, and then boom.
Oh, you still can, but yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. But like that's all you had. You couldn't just go to the store and get it. You had to know how to make it, and then acquire the pieces, and then make some quantity of it. And then I guess it goes bad, gets damp, so you got to then protect it. So yeah, it was a ordeal.
Well, the beauty of black powder versus smokeless, and I've seen this, and I don't know that this is true with black powder substitutes, right? So don't go out there and dump your Power Decks into a jug of water. But I've got a buddy down the road who is licensed. He's a licensed pyrotechnic guy. Builds big, huge fireworks, the kinds you see in the big cities and big, huge events and things like that. And he makes his own black powder. And he tweaks it according to the fireworks and all kinds of things. But he'll also make some to shoot in his black powder rifles. And one of the things black powder has, as opposed to smokeless, and it's because a lot of the other chemicals, there's only a few components to black powder, whereas with smokeless, there's all types of chemical reactions and chemicals going on, and moisture and water affects those drastically. Black powder, you can dry it out, and it'll go. Like, so if you get your whatever you've got, your powder horn or whatever, and it somehow it gets wet, dump that out on a paper towel on a cookie sheet out in the sun one day. Leave it out there all day, and odds are you can put that stuff back in there and it'll fire. It's crazy. So even though technology moved forward, right, in the sense of black powder to smokeless powder, and being able to do a lot of different things, obviously, with a lot of different types of cartridges, there's a drawback. to that. I mean, smokeless powder gets wet, you're pretty much screwed. I mean, it doesn't dry out the same. Um, and so my point was that is for centuries we had black powder as a propellant. Um, we've had for well over what 150 or so years, or we're pretty close, I guess. Smokeless powder. But with the jump in technology, you would think we would at this point, or at least I would think that we would be seeing people play around with propellants more. And a lot of people say air, but the thing about air is air's been around for a very, very long time too, a couple hundred years, plus or something like that. So, um, yeah, I don't know what the next evolution in that is going to be, or if there's going to be one, but you would think there has to be at some point.
Well, there definitely will be something, but yeah, it kind of depends on what layer gets, what step we get next. If it's some kind of a magnet step, if it's some sort of laser step, right? If it's some sort of a material step or a chemistry step. There's a lot of stuff going on in guns
and
with ammo.
Yeah, and I think when you mention magnetics and lasers, I think battery tech. We know we're fairly behind the curve on battery tech, and
Well, that's
I think
because we're trying to shove stuff through copper wire. It's a really interesting thing about the internet. So the internet, if you look at the internet, right, it's one way to look at the internet, or actually the technical way to look at the internet, is layers. There's different layers to it, and the physical layers, the connecting of your computer to another computer, is something that when the internet was created needed to be done with a piece of wire. Mm-hmm. There was technologies available, but they were budding. So getting two devices to send data to each other was done with a wire, and to get that wire longer and longer, there was different evolutions and stuff, but the goal was to get it into the telephone system so that basically effectively a bunch of wires would connect you with a really long extension cord, and these two computers would be physically connected through a wire. And obviously things have changed since the olden days, but when you consider that concept that the internet used to be connected to a wire, it was all built. The table is built on those legs. There was a floor under it. Somewhere along the way, they figured out that what you're putting on the table is way more important than the legs of the table. Right. And sometimes you got a floating table, and sometimes you're on a picnic table. There's other things. So now that the internet is all this data that's on the top layers, there's a lot of people looking at the idea of let's just quit worrying about the bottom layers. And when you think about that concept, you start thinking about, does the internet need to be chopped up into these little pieces, which were done so that they could accomplish doing something that was 70 years ago tech? So when you think about technology, what are you trying to get accomplished and how to do it, and what are you still tethered to, right? So yeah, some of these technologies and some of these concepts, so like battery life, I guess where you started with battery life, is all about trying to shove energy through copper. If you get towards light, think something more like a Superman type of, the old 80s Supermans where crystals and whatnot in his castle or whatever that was. Yeah. If you get into something where it holds light and you just need a light source, and think about a light amplifying, think of a funnel of light that goes the other way, or some kind of weird disco ball thing happening with like a jet in an airplane. A jet in an airplane is just fuel and a funnel and some air pressure. And then if you shove a bunch of air through around a funnel in a tube, you what is that called? Aerate. You atomize the fuel into little droplets, and if you push those little droplets past a funnel, it creates like a weird vortex, and you light that on fire, and you're a jet engine. You know what I mean? Like that. That's not a lot of moving parts in a jet engine. So, as we move forward, thinking about other ways to get light down a tube or light in a direction, we're not so much encumbered with the moving a bunch of electrons to do it, and we're just instead concentrating on the light. There's a lot of magic there, and there's some holographic stuff, and there's some optical computers and stuff. So there's directions that we don't even think about. And when you get to space and you get into 0G and you get some perfect crystals and you get a whole different thing. And once you get a space station building perfect crystals, we haven't lived in that world yet. We've had to deal with gravity. So there's some stuff that we can't even imagine. And anybody who thinks that they've seen it all, I mean, pick any point in time and you could find writings where somebody's like, we've seen it all. There's that famous Bill Gates, you'll never need more than 4 megabytes of RAM. Because in his world, you didn't need 4 megabytes of RAM. He just didn't realize that his world was a finite, second on a giant clock.
Yep.
But anyway, that's getting into things. So yeah, I think you're right. And one of the things you mentioned there in the development there too is, as I was thinking there, think of all the infrastructure and stuff, all the people. You could go off in a tangent on any. Just think of a bullet. You take apart a bullet. You've got the projectile. You've got the case. You've got the powder. You've got the primer in general. But you've got the objective of the thing, right? The reason it was created in the first place and what it's replacing and the platform it's going to go into, right? Like all those are factors that nobody ever thinks about. But now take any of those physical factors, the projectile, come on, man. Like, holy moly, has that changed? There's people that dedicate their entire lives in the pursuit of a type of projectile, not just like projectiles, like blah, 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 golf balls. Like, no. Like projectiles for this caliber, for this use in a different way, right? Like the Super Val is the one that comes to mind because I've just been thinking about that a lot. But, you think of, I don't know, the semi-trunicated. Who came up with that and how much development there? Very few things, I'm sure, were like a casual, oh, yeah, well, no big deal. Let's just change, let's evolve the whole thing or take us a next step by just accidentally discovering something. I think a lot of this stuff was people weren't satisfied or they needed to accomplish something that the resources couldn't accomplish yet. So if we can just get this piece out of here, then it takes, so you have the surplus materials from the wars, the not the Cold War, but the World War II. You get all those projectiles, all that powder, and you get hunters that are like, well, the stuff that we buy surplus isn't that great, but if we cut down the neck, we turn the bullet around and smush it a little bit different and take this powder out and put in some powder that came out of that phosphorus grenade over there. That's a whole different story. And then they go, oh, well, you know what? They're selling that phosphorus grenade powder really cheap because nobody wants it anymore. And now we can, I'm not saying don't do that, but you know what I mean? Like some of these things were like happenstance. And then once people figured out that we're not limited to what's in front of us and we're entrepreneurial and we're capitalists and we're hunting in Africa and we're hunting in, everywhere. Polar bears, we're hunting in Canada, we're hunting in Mexico, we're hunting in places where we need different characteristics out of a firearm than we need with our wildlife here in the United States. So, either hunting at greater distance or greater size. So anyway, you get, that's just the projectile. Then you get into the powder and it gets into I was watching a thing where they were talking about the guy, DuPont, who made all the gunpowder for Civil War. Then he made all the gunpowder for World War I. Then he owned General Motors because he had nothing else to do with all that money, right? So like, it's crazy how you get to and then now you get, DuPont. I mean, it's one of the giant companies, right? All these offshoots, they're making gunpowder. They figure out gasoline. That, according to that show, he was selling, it went from like $1 million a year to $40 million a year selling Ford the material that he made the dashboards out of. Right. So DuPont was like, well, I'm just going to make cars if he's got that much growth. So then he just buys General Motors and so somewhere along the way, Velcro comes out of it, right? Like all these different sticky notepads, like all the stuff that 3M has created. So how much of that is
all your polymers and different things?
Seriously, everything, yeah. And if you listen to some people, like his whole thing is like the attack from DuPont when he created nylon against all the natural fibers of cotton and hemp and the bamboo and the things that are renewable resource crops, things that are grasses that can be, grown 3 or 4 times in some climates in a year, 2 or 3 growing seasons per year to make a renewable paper. You get the forestry industry, you get the people who own big stretches, old timber, and then you get DuPont and all those renewable natural resources never had a chance. What would the world be like if instead of burning trees for the longest time and then switching to coal, because we had those infrastructures, we would have been doing bamboo or stuff on those grasslands that we did nothing with. Well, right? What Kansas would have been like the bamboo capital of the planet, and we'd be anyway, lots of different potential there. But that's because DuPont and the ammunition from Civil War.
Yeah, I mean, imagine not to get all green, right? But imagine a world where we don't develop, nylons and polymers and we're relying on things that grow in the earth, plants, and think of all the
deforestation of silk and the things like natural rubbers and stuff. And we would have developed that into, super rubbers and super silks and we already have the what do you call those things? The vascular materials inside of the grasses and the bamboos is what we make carbon nanotubules out of. You take that and you process it and you get super fiber, super materials. So yeah, I mean, we've definitely gotten back around to it, but you're right, it would have been a whole different route. We'd have been
Oh,
like
you're talking
maybe
about.
like one of these sci-fi movies where everybody's like everything's made out of baskets and
Well,
lashed
it's not
together.
that. I was going another way. And think about the damage that could have been done to the earth or the ecosystem, right?
Oh, you mean if we just didn't develop
Like
some
we
leaps and
had to
bounds and just
rely on
burned everything down
plants.
and we're living in the wasteland? Yeah, that would
Yeah.
have been pretty bad.
Like,
Would have
you
been.
can only grow crops consistently on a piece of land so long, right? I mean, you got to rotate things around and or keep them fertilized or whatever. And, it takes a while for forests to grow to produce trees. And,
Well, it
if
could have created a lot different like dams and canals, right? Because if you would have required all that, you would have had to terraformed, and then maybe it would have been
yeah,
global cooling or something that they're worried about.
the
Like
truth.
we'll never be
Yeah.
able to produce enough bamboo if we keep the world this cool. But yeah,
Right.
who knows? But anyway, so yeah, it's all kind of interesting there. And how much of that I'm going to include in here, obviously very little of what we just riffed on there, but that's the kind of stuff that makes ammo so neat. And hopefully providing a resource like this will give people some inspiration to incorporate that into whatever, because I can't even imagine, because you wouldn't, I don't think you even get like bleach in some of the factories that are necessary. Are they precursors? Like you couldn't get some of the materials for next, like what am I trying to say? Like the evolution of tech or invention needs the basic materials in excess, like affordable. And you get places like
Right.
DuPont making enough whatever for the whole war. Same thing as like the people that like Ford making enough cars. Whatever he was kicking out of his factory, whatever was the waste there's a whole bunch of people going, that's a lot of waste. Let's figure out what to do with that and make it into something useful. And that's what you get with these chemical companies. They're like,
Right.
this is what was it? Gasoline was a waste product of something.
Diesel.
So they
Diesel.
figured out that gasoline engines needed it or something.
Diesel's a byproduct of gasoline. Well,
Okay, so I knew that something was a byproduct, and just until there was a machine that needed it, they were
Yeah.
just pouring it into the ground.
And a
then
lot
they're
of
like,
things
"Oh,
didn't
it
realize.
seems
A
like
lot of
of
things didn't
material."
realize. A lot of people don't realize what all comes out of a gallon of crude, right? You look at a gallon of crude oil and you think, and it does depend whether you're talking to sweet crude or what type of crude, right? But a lot of people don't get the amount of plastics, the amount of lubricants and fuels and things that come out of one barrel. So, when you look at the price of a barrel of oil, you think, wow, that's high, a lot of times. But then when you think about all the different things that can come out of that barrel, right? Because it's refined. People don't think about the refinery process. A lot of times they think about, okay, it comes out of the ground, it goes into a barrel or whatever, and I put it in my car, right? Or it's refined and I put it into my gas tank. And you don't realize all of the different things that come out of that, which is crazy. Yeah, there's some illustrations, as a matter of fact.
I'm looking for a good illustration of it that's big enough. But yeah, I think of it more. I guess when I would not thinking about it, I would think, oh, a gallon of or a barrel of oil. Okay, they make that into gasoline, and then maybe 3 of them they make into gasoline, and the 4th one they make into plastic or
Right,
something. But
right. Like, no.
I guess it makes sense because what they're really doing is shoving it up a pipe, and some of it gets, some of it at this size or this viscosity gets sucked off here, and some of it gets sucked off here. So your heavy stuff is at the bottom and your light stuff is at the top. So it's all one thing that gets stratified. Is that what they do? I don't know what it's called, but yeah, you get
Maybe
20 gallons. I don't think this has anything to do with which one's heavier than each other. This is just quantity, but you get out of a barrel, and I'm guessing a 55-gallon barrel, you get 20 gallons of gas, 10 gallons of diesel, 4 gallons of jet fuel, a couple of gallons of heavy fuel oil, a gallon or so of propane, gallon of asphalt for roads, petrochemical feedstocks. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. And then other products is all the filth, probably. You get 5 gallons of filth out of there. So, yeah, kind of interesting. But yeah, the same kind of thing with if they're going to refine, I don't know, whatever they refine, some kind of rock or something, then they're going to get the byproduct of that and then figure out, oh, well, that's basically table salt or that's, some kind of talcum powder or something. And that's where you get a bunch of people looking at this pile of waste and going, how can we make money off that pile of waste?
Right.
Use it for.
Right.
All right. So back to kind of going through. So I was talking about the evolution of this project where, in the 2A history project overall, ammunition history isn't super, I don't know what to call it. I mean, it isn't necessary. It's sort of critical, but at the same time, it's just one sliver of the giant straw pile of 2A stuff. So I've given it 4 pages out of a 50-page book where most topics get 1 page. So I'm giving it extra attention in the one project, but still, that was just literally a tiny written timeline. Like there was no visual, nothing to it, because it was just so much detail, so much stuff trying to get crammed in there. So then I took that 4 pages of data from one project and expanded it into something like, I guess that's what I was looking at before. How many pages over here? Something like 39 pages over here. And I've added some stuff to it, of course, but it's basically starts off with this timeline and has things like the calibers that get invented, the companies that get created, and eventually I'll have things like this as a book that's written. So as far as I know, the first book about the history of ammunition was written in 1943. So that's the kind of thing, like if someone knows about or can do a quick search or something and find something more than that, then that's just the kind of thing that I think collaborative projects like this have the potential for. But anyway, so then we get people like Bill Wooden, who lived here in Tucson. Really cool guy, passed just a couple years ago, but started the International Ammunition Association, a collectors group back in 1955. So, you know, you think about that. It wasn't until 1955 that there was an international collectors group, which means there's probably collectors and stuff, but they weren't like super organized and not really aware of each other, I guess. So they couldn't do anything like a collaborative effort to archive or catalog all the stuff, right? Because it's really difficult for one person to categorize all this stuff, but a whole bunch of people working together, like we see in the forums and on other projects today, you know, that can be accomplished. So it wasn't until 1955 that I'm aware of that anybody had done that on an international scale, and that organization still exists today, and they're still, you know, they're online and they're doing their thing. They're a really cool collectors group, actually. And it brings together people from all different facets and stuff. But I guess what I'm getting at is if it took until 1955, imagine all the knowledge and specimens and collectibles that never got, you know what I mean? Like didn't get appreciated or just got lost to time, you know, along the way. So I'm sure somebody was thinking in 1955, like it's about time somebody did this, but we're looking at it like, wow, it took until 1955 till someone even did it. You would think that there could be appreciation of that kind of stuff in 1850 when the cartridges were first created. You know, like, oh, let's save some of these paper and foil things that were kind of the precursors of cartridges. I don't think many people did, though, other than keeping them in inventory as product or something, or as arsenal. And then, you know, before they got thrown out, somebody kept a handful years later.
Right.
Now, one of the things you mentioned when I was out before was talking about the different, like the development of the actions. And I don't know where to put this. I'm including it because something like, I don't remember the exact way it went, but it went something like flintlock, matchlock, I don't know, like 600 locks. And then you finally get to breeches and then cartridges. And then you have a weird kind of transition period where people were adopting cartridges and figuring it out, and then you get to the established cartridges. But as far as the actions, I probably am going to put a mention, just like I'm going to have a mention of some of the major military campaigns or events of the time, like World War II is useful to have in a timeline just so people can have it for reference, but also so that you can see the reaction in industry, in this case ammunition. Like there's probably a bunch of ammo that comes out a couple of years after the war when, like I was saying, people got home and started to hunt and shoot competitively and do things and required more ammo than like the 30 Super Carry. You know, stuff was created to address that. So I'm going to have certain things in there to give waypoints to the timeline, but having the actions of the various firearms, I think, is interesting later on, like when semi-auto was invented, when pump action was invented, that kind of thing. But then all these locks, flintlock, wheel lock, matchlock, there's more than that. Percussion caps, I think you mentioned. And there was a couple of different kind of primers. Like until some of that stuff developed and then became established, that was ammo. Like, you know what I mean? Like it was probably people sitting around in whatever version of the internet forum there was back in 1420 they were like, oh, I've got a matchlock. You still have a matchlock? I'm using a wheel lock. Oh, but it rains where I come from, so I have to use a flintlock, and it's weatherproof. The flintlock's like my AK-47 of old-fashioned guns. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, they were having that discussion, sitting around a bar, getting in fights, knocking stuff over because somebody didn't respect somebody's matchlock or whatever.
Right.
But anyway, so I figured that's all kind of ammo. But then that's just the ignition source. That's like the primer / cartridge. There is no cartridge, I guess. That's just the barrel. But as far as projectiles back in the day, I don't know if we've ever talked about it, but on the Daily Gun Show, I've certainly talked about when I was a youngin'. My parents were divorced, so I would go on sort of like 2 vacations, one with my dad's side of the family, one with my mom's side of the family. We went fishing on my mom's side of the family every year. And that was pretty routine. Every once in a while, we'd go on a plane to like Disneyland or something, like once to Disneyland, once to Disney World, but otherwise going fishing all the time. And then my other side of the family, we would tour the Civil War battlefields, period. That's pretty much all we ever did. So I think I've been to every single one. It feels like I've been to every single one. And one of the ways I kept entertained back in the day, and this was driving a camper to go drive to all the Civil War battlefields. So it's definitely got a perspective of how far away they are from each other, how big the country is, and that kind of thing. But that thing there, that guy's head looked like some kind of weird thing on my monitor. I've been sitting here trying to peel it off my other monitor over here for like an hour. All right, so now I figured out it's just my screen. Anyway, I started having like a shoebox or a cigar box of old weird ammo, projectiles and stuff from these battlefields. Not like picking it up, but like buying it at the souvenir shop or whatever. Like I'm pretty sure you're not allowed to pick it up at the battlefield, but you could buy it, or at least stuff that was of the similar age, I guess, probably from the battlefield. I don't really remember. But anyway, there was a ton of different stuff, like a ton of different things. And it was pretty much, I guess, determined by what mold you had and what molds you decided to buy. And there was probably as many people making molds as there is many people with ideas about ammo today, right? Like, oh, I'm going to make it a mini ball. Oh, I'm going to make it a round ball. Oh, I'm going to make it a football shape or something. Like,
make it hollow inside. I'm going to make it hollow on the front. I'm going to make it, yeah,
seriously. Or we put this in either way, and if you want to go farther distance, put it in backwards or whatever. Like there was those kind of shapes. The only thing I didn't have is something like literally like that one thing that's now with the smoothbore, like a football with fins on it. Nobody ever made a football shape with fins, at least that I had in my collection, or I have ever seen. Somebody might have made it. I don't know, but
not back then. Not that I've seen. Every time we go to Tulsa, I hang with my ammo collector guy a little bit, and I've never seen anything like that in his old cases with his old stuff.
I don't really have pictures of that stuff. I don't have my collection anymore, but I know there's people out there. So that's one of those things collaboratively or whatever. Like, I'll be reaching out to try to find people that either have the pictures of that old stuff or get some pictures of that old stuff.
And that's not
what they had as far as options.
Yeah, that's not to say that somebody wasn't playing around with that idea back then, right?
So you never know, because
it wasn't commonly used was the only thing.
Well, that's the thing. Unless you went to the store and bought such and such as mold, you went to the blacksmith and said, "Can you make me a mold?" And then he took some kind of finger and shoved it in your barrel, and then you know what I mean? Like I don't know what measurement was back then. Maybe took a piece of stick and jammed it in your barrel, and then he just made a mold to the stick fit in it, and then that was your mold, and then. Maybe you modified that, or maybe they were smart enough to, I'm sure they were smart enough to make it a little smaller than the stick and then whittle it bigger, try a couple, whittle it bigger.
Well, they used patches. That's why they used patches too, right?
Oh, that's a good point. And the mini ball concept. As soon as that got around, then they figured out,
barrel,
we can make it.
Barrel wear so that you could use a ball in a different size, that little barrel that was a little more wore out or a little less or whatever.
Well, here's the thing. You were mentioning it too. For 400 years, well, from 1200, they invented gunpowder, but it was the 1400s that it was like going around making gunpowder until 1850 that there was a cartridge. So something like 400 years. Think about how many generations that is. So it's like, this is my grandfather's gun, but because nothing's changed, like except for maybe the stuff you're going to chew up and use as a wad or something like that probably didn't change either. That was just the same linen or whatever, or paper, right? So basically you got tradition and experience handed down at a level that we're not familiar with. Like nothing about our lives are different.
Well,
baby not toddler, yeah, even toddler. I mean, like our lives change so quickly from phones to cars to communication methods. Like we don't know what it's like to have something handed down. Nobody can hand nothing down, and we can't hand much down as far as how to apply knowledge to tools. But back in the day, that's all there was. Like this is the way that Grandpa did his patch. That's the way you're doing your patch. You know what I mean? Like you didn't really question it, because why would you? Why would you bother? It wasn't like you go to the store and it was like a book about all the different ways to use a patch or something.
I don't know the gap. What is the gap in between black powder being invented and the first, what would be considered a black powder rifle?
Matchlock, that's interesting.
Wheel lock.
So you've got your
Because prior to that,
the hand cannons and the pole guns, which are basically like a tube with a hole towards the end, and you jam powder in it.
Literally a hand cannon. It's lit with a fuse.
Yeah. And all they did is add that to a stick so you could do it far away from your face. But otherwise, it was just like holding a mortar or something. But yeah, that was all you had for a long time, because no one figured out that if you made it longer and better, that you could hold it.
Yeah. Yep.
I guess that's all that happened. Or if everybody who did died trying to do it, maybe like, I bet you if I made that longer and it would be better, and they died, and then until the next guy figured it out, right?
Right. Don't do what Bob did. Yeah.
But I have no idea. And also, I don't know. Back in the day, it was for noises. For like hundreds of years, it was for noises, because you couldn't get enough of it. You'd have to have literally a cannon with a cannonball to have enough of it to push something big enough to do any damage, because of the physics and everything and the precise.
They shot a lot of little, like the nest of hornets and things like that. It was a lot of, little things.
Shotgun type of thing.
And, more scatter shot, and then also for signaling. Yeah.
For signaling, for sure. And then lots of lots of uses, I'm sure. And then blowing things up. I mean, you cram enough of it under a wall, and the wall ain't there no more. That was always a thing. So, and it took them a while to make black dynamite and stuff. I mean, a long time here. So, yeah, there was a long time of just fiddling. And I don't know. That's a good question. When I see the first matchlock firearms were in the 1500s. So, it's telling us something like 100 years-ish it took before they were carrying them around, and the knowledge and the skill got around to make guns out of them instead of just noisemakers and cannons and bombs. But also, I mean, what are you going to shoot? You would have to have a development of a projectile, otherwise you're just shooting a whole bunch of shotguns.
Right.
But it says the shrapnel shell was invented in 1784, and that's where we get shrapnels, because that guy's name was Shrapnel. So that was invented in 1784. So before the percussion cap, really.
Right.
Anyway, so that kind of stuff is interesting. Not so much to me, but I know somebody's super interested in it. And that's the kind of stuff that I'll bet is interesting on another level, because it's hard to research. Like I enjoy the overall picture, and I enjoy figuring out ways to present that, get it across and archive it, but I don't have time to look at super details of too many things. So this is definitely a thing that I'm aware of, but I'm not gonna microscope it or get to a microscope level on it. But because people are, or one of the reasons I bet people are interested in that is because you can't just go online and just find all that. I bet you that stuff's way harder to research than, I don't know, any other type of ammo that I can think of, literally. Except maybe some of the stuff like the Soviet stuff, where they just didn't bother to keep a lot of records, or if they did keep records, nobody kept records. They burned up in a fire or something, or they're just gone. Mm-hmm. Oh, so that's a couple of things, all from what you had talked about whenever you first jumped in. We've been going for an hour, so I'll leave it up. I don't know how much kind of time you got, and my goal isn't to really waste anybody's time or to prove nothing here. This is a project that I've been kicking around since the middle of last year, and instead of pushing it off another 3 weeks yet again, I figured I'd take a little time and just dig into it again. If nothing else, I remembered what I was doing a year or so ago, and I uploaded or kind of refreshed the file here, pulled it into this year's work list, although it's got no priority. As much as I'd like to go in and do this project, like a 50-something page book on the history of ammo, kind of a somewhere between, I'm gonna call it like a graphic novel. I'm not trying to write a book. I'm not Logan, right? I'm not a historian writing a history. There's no paragraphs in here. I like to do stuff with some about 50-50 images and text, and I like the text to be fairly obvious so that it's more like a phone book or a I don't know what to call it, like a manual, right? Like a reloader's manual more than a history of ammo, but at the same time be just packed full of data, because for me this is way cooler. Being able to pick up something like this would be so much cooler in a conversation. Hey, we're having a conversation, which came first or which is whatever. Somebody might know where to go look for some kind of info in a reloader's manual, and people can definitely search for it online, especially once this is all posted online also. But having it, you can just flip through a book or whatever. I like that form factor. So I think it'd be neat to exist. But like I say, I don't see any urgency for it. So it's something I'll just keep kicking down the road. But thank our Patreons who give us the time to work on it. And I'll keep asking. Well, I started asking here, Clover, if he has more time, or y'all listening if you want to keep going. But I'll shut up and let y'all answer. Should we keep going or wrap it up at this point?
I've got to jump. I mean, I'll be listening if y'all keep going, but I only had a couple minutes here. So
yeah, no problem. I appreciate you jumping in the middle of the day. Like I say, this was sort of I was like, hey, this thing came up to be kind of, I consider it like renewed. Every time this thing comes up, I'm like, nah, I'm not doing that show. I'll kick it another month down the road. And then it comes up a month later. Like I say, I just figured today I'd hit it. I'll probably schedule things like this into the future. I do that over on Streamyard. I'll just go over to Streamyard and schedule some stuff that I'd like to do in case I can do it. You know what I'm saying? So I'll do that. I'll just throw this project up in a couple of months, and we'll see what the world is like then and what my schedule is like and what we're able to do. Because, man, I can't get enough. Something about ammo. I just can't get enough of it. I think it's because it's overlooked and it's such a deep pool. There's so many ways to dig into it. And maybe I spent so much of my time just not really paying that much attention to it. I've figured out what I needed to know. And then as soon as I got comfortable with what I needed at that moment for whatever, moving on. It's sort of like a sling for me. I'm not like fixated on slings. I got my opinions, that came from whatever research I did and, input I got, and then done. Like, I'm not putting more time into slings, so it's something like that. Maybe it's just I don't know. And they're neat. I guess hanging out at Bill's Wooden's collection, seeing a giant collection and just all the different specimen pieces and stuff. There's so much variety and so much direction, like just so many tangents or whatever. Like they go off in so many different weird angles. It's just neat to see.
Right.
All right. Most again, thanks for jumping in. Keep gambling, but don't need to. We'll let's see. What is today? Thursday. You got anything coming up? You want to plug anything?
No, I mean, next week the podcasts start back up. I can't remember who I've got scheduled now, but it's over on the channel.
You know what I should have done? Is bugged you before you left. You probably seen Super Carry at that event, huh? One of those events you went to?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I should have bugged somebody who went to them things to get me a couple of Super Carries for my collection, because I didn't think about that at SHOT. I don't know why I don't do this, but I probably should go up and down the thing grabbing a couple of cartridges, So
right.
It did pick up a 7.62x39 this year at SHOT, but it was nothing interesting. It's just that I don't go buy ammo no more. So if they're shooting, 19 or 2020 brass or steel, I guess, at one of the bays at SHOT, they don't care if I pick up a bunch of their brass, or they probably wouldn't care if I took a live round. And I'm driving home, so I probably could have added a whole bunch to my collection this year, but I'm an idiot and I totally forgot about it. Right. So anyway, so if anybody is out there and wants to contribute to my ammo collection, I appreciate it. I'm not looking for free ammo, but if you want to send me an empty box, much appreciated. And then empty cartridge, so I get the head stamp and to see what kind of case and whatever finish they put on it. If you want to send me a round or two, just send it regular UPS and you just put a stamp on there and ground, and they're happy. They're okay with it. And much appreciated. A couple of people, Travis from Nebraska, Travis P11, has sent me some of his 7.62x39 specimen pieces. So that's helping the 7.62x39 collection grow. But that's really, I guess I should mention there, it's all I'm really interested in 7.62x39 specimens. But right. As far as something like a specimen caliber, I wasn't even thinking, because I'm sure they had Super Carry at the thing. Are there any other new calibers out besides Super Carry?
6.8 Western.
Oh yeah. See, I didn't think about AR calibers. There's a bunch of those that I don't have.
There's a
And there's also bolt calibers.
Nozzler has a few. Can't think of them off the top of my head. But
So that's the thing. There's so much stuff with ammo collecting. I don't consider myself a real ammo collector because I'll walk past SHOT every year and barely pick up any new ammo specimens because I just don't think about it. But anyway, there's probably a lot of opportunity there too. But anyway, so I was going to bug you about getting me a super carry, but obviously I didn't, and I could have myself. So it's my own fault for not paying attention. Anyway, so Clover's channel is CloverTac over on the YouTube and on every other platform you might look for people. And you mentioned you've got, what, 3 or 4 interviews stacked still, like scheduled coming up?
Yeah, I've got Diana Muller, and I've got next week's Lionheart, and then Diana Muller, and then the week after that, I've got the Armed Attorneys on the schedule.
That's right.
And I don't have anybody else on the schedule yet, but working on getting that back on track. It's had the shows last week and then got Tulsa next weekend. So got some events we're having to work through and deal with right now. But that's where you get the contacts. So those are kind of necessary evils, so to speak, even though they kind of set the podcast back a little bit. But we'll get there.
Speaking of that, yeah, Tulsa is the world's largest gun show. That's next weekend in Tulsa. It's actually the Wanamaker gun show. Wanamaker Arms Show is the show we're talking about. It's in Tulsa next weekend. So anybody that's in the area or able to get there and want to see what sounds like going to be coming back to its former glory with everybody showing up and having a good time, then check it out.
Yep.
Anyway, thanks for showing up. We got one vote from Makojo to keep going, but everybody else was probably busy doing their stuff during the day. This is kind of a weird time to do a live show, but there's no perfect time. So again, thanks everybody for showing up. I'll throw a couple of commercials out here, and we'll be back to pick you up later. If I can find them. GearWebsites.com is your source for firearms-based playing cards and books. We also have mugs, shirts, and posters with designs that we've made live. Of course, we have patches. Every Friday is Free Patch Friday. We appreciate your support. Thank you for shopping at GearWebsites.com. Thank you for supporting our projects. If you'd like to buy us a cup of coffee, check out our Patreon channel.
The guys and gals at GunWebsites.com encourage you to take a CCW class every year, practice at least once a month, and carry every day. Thank you for watching GunWebsites.com.
Oh, snap. Special bonus at the end. I forgot to mention this at the beginning for Kingpin. So I literally said, hey, Kingpin, if you can wait for a moment, I'll tell you what's up. And then I totally blew it off. But if I can find it, where is it? Is any of these going to show up? I guess, oh, there it is. Is that it? So I was going to stream on Odyssey, but it turns out Odyssey is super complicated, and I still don't, let me refresh just in case. I still don't have my streaming. So I do have my 50 credits. I got 71 over here, and I moved them over to be immediately spendable. However, I'm still not something. So I was planning on streaming on Odyssey today, and that's why we went live a little bit late. And sorry about that, Kingpin, but thanks for the whatever these are, credits or what. Kingpin sent us some over, and I had made a video on how to shuffle them over. I've done some research and thought I figured out how to shuffle them over. I had pulled a bunch of videos down that each video has a credit on it in order to keep it in the blockchain. And I pulled the videos down to reclaim those credits. And in addition to the ones that people had given me, I have this 50 moved over, but evidently I haven't triggered whatever needs to be triggered or don't have them in the right place. But eventually we'll be streaming on Odyssey, a blockchain platform. If you don't know what that means, I highly encourage you to check it out. Maybe it's the next level of the internet.